Welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for November the 17th of 2020. Of course, this is a daily gaming news podcast meant to bring you the hottest news you need to know from around the industry. Hosted on YouTube and podcast services around the world 5 days a week, it's your one-stop shop for everything you need to know. And it's also a Halo Infinite waiting room because this was one of my most anticipated games of the year, and just a couple of months before launch, the game was pushed back indefinitely with no definitive release date in sight except for a release in 2021. But it looks like some news is coming soon, because although Halo Infinite will not be at the Game Awards, 343 Industries says an update is coming soon. News on Halo Infinite has been nearly non-existent since Microsoft and 343 Industries announced earlier this year that the next-gen shooter would be delayed to 2021. Ahead of what is likely the year's largest remaining video game event, the Game Awards, some fans have started to theorize that perhaps Infinite could reappear at the showing next month. It turns out, however, that won't be the case. In a thread over on Reddit, 343 community director Brian Jarrard confirmed that the studio has no plans to show off Halo Infinite during the Game Awards. That being said, it does not sound as though there will continue to be a lingering silence around the project for long. Quote, full disclosure, we don't have anything planned for the VGAs, but are hoping to offer at least a high-level update within the next few weeks so we can kind of restart this journey together after the holidays, Jarrard said in response to questions of Infinite appearing at the event. Pulling together something like a demo or big beat for the VGAs is an enormous amount of work and would cause challenges with current milestones of the holidays. I know it's hard to wait, but the team is going to make the most of this extra time, and we want to make sure we can put our best foot forward and commit to greater transparency and dialogue on the road ahead. We'll get there and get the train going again. This is perhaps unsurprising in some regards, and it continues to show that 343 is clearly keeping its cards close to the chest until it has something more to show of Infinite. Still, I am curious to see what this high-level update Jarrard mentioned will feature. At this point, any new trailers or gameplay seems to be out of the question, but I imagine the studio will provide some general guidance on what it plans to do in order to launch the game next year. For now, all we really know about Halo Infinite is that it's planned to release next year across Series X and S, Xbox One, and PC. As for the Game Awards, this year's event is set to occur on December the 10th. Even if Halo itself does not end up appearing, perhaps something else from the Xbox Game Studios teams will. So, right off the bat, still really feeling the lack of Halo Infinite in the Xbox Series X and S launch. This was not a decision that was taken lightly, because if you look from the back of the box to a lot of the marketing commercials that you see on television, Master Chief is still front and center, even though the only new game that's out there is an update for the Master Chief Collection, and that game came out towards the launch of the Xbox One, so it's not really a new game. With that being said, I'm staying positive about the game because I'm still looking forward to it. It's still one of my most anticipated first-person shooters of the decade. Cannot wait to see what 343 comes up with. But I still have this feeling in the back of my mind that things are not okay. And I know that Phil Spencer calmed fans last week and said that there's nothing to worry about. He has no concerns, specifically regarding all of the high turnovers over at 343 in regards to leadership. But I feel like the team they have now, where you have Halo veterans that have been there for a very long time and returning big names from previous games, are able to create a game that is going to satisfy fans. But again, the potential is there, it's just the fulfillment, and I think that it could happen. But I'm still looking forward to Infinite. Now, with that being said, what can we expect from this new update coming soon? I don't think it's going to be a release date, but I think a release window is potentially going to be shared. Now, I would love to see some gameplay. I would love to see some new screenshots. I would love to see a comparison of Craig from, the showing earlier this July versus Craig now, where perhaps he's improved a bit. I just want to see what's happening behind the scenes, and ultimately, you need to be able to have something to show for it, and hopefully they have been working on that diligently, as I'm sure they have, because again, this is potentially the most important game on the Xbox Series X and S. Halo sells consoles. People love Halo. Halo is Xbox. That is just simply how it is. So I'm looking forward to hearing more, but it looks like they will not be showing off anything brand new at the Game Awards, but an update is coming soon. Now, speaking of Microsoft, they want future Bethesda games to be first or best on Xbox, according to the CFO. Speaking at the Jefferies Interactive Entertainment Conference last week, Xbox Chief Financial Officer Tim Stewart discussed how Microsoft intends to handle the release of Bethesda Softworks games once the Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and Doom publisher becomes a first-party company. Microsoft announced in September that it intends to acquire ZeniMax Media and its game publisher Bethesda Softworks for $7.5 billion, with the deal expected to be completed in early 2021. What we'll do in the long run is we don't have any intentions of just pulling all Bethesda content out of Sony or Nintendo or otherwise, Stewart said, transcribed by Seeking Alpha. But what we want is we want that content in the long run to be either first or better or best or pick your differentiated experience on our platforms. We will want Bethesda content to show up as best as on our platforms. Yes, that is not a point about being exclusive. That is not a point about where we're being, adjusting timing or content or roadmap. But if you think about something like Game Pass, if it shows up best in Game Pass, that's what we want to see, and we want to drive our Game Pass subscriber base through that Bethesda pipeline. So again, I'm not announcing pulling content from platforms one way or the other, Stewart continued, but I suspect you'll continue to see a shift towards a first or better or best approach on our platforms. Microsoft's acquisition of ZeniMax Media will see Xbox Game Studios grow from 15 to 23 development teams. And of course, they go on to talk more about the ZeniMax deal, which we've covered in depth on previous episodes of the show if you do want to check that out. But this is what I predicted would happen whenever the acquisition went down. Now, I could see it going both ways, and I've said that before, I'll say it again. If Microsoft bought ZeniMax Media, they very well could use that in the same way that Sony uses Sony Santa Monica to make God of War, in the same way they use Naughty Dog to make The Last of Us and The Last of Us Part 2. You could make big first-party exclusives that inevitably would bring people into Xbox. But alternatively, you could make it a better place to play these games, and then on top of that, you also have additional revenue sources from other popular platforms, such as the PlayStation 5, where these games will sell incredibly well. Of course, when it comes to marketing, they're going to be very Xbox-centric. When it comes to the new expansions, they're probably going to be timed exclusives. It's that kind of thing that you're going to be seeing from Xbox going forward, and that's not necessarily a bad situation, because then Microsoft is not the big bad video game company. They're not trying to keep any experience from anyone, but if you do want the best experience, you can play it on Xbox or PC. And if that's what they want to do with their purchase, I suppose that they very well can. But personally, I think this is some good news because although I am an Xbox fan and I have an Xbox Series X, I would never want to lock a new Elder Scrolls or a new Fallout or a new Doom away from anybody on the competing platforms. And then on top of that, no one really wants that negative press for Microsoft. Because although they are still making up tons of ground in comparison to Sony, who absolutely dominated the last generation, it's still going to be a very evil corporation move to make these AAA exclusives exclusive to Xbox. And so no one really wants that to happen. Now, when it comes to the better, best, or first on Xbox, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of the first. I think you're going to be seeing a lot of the best place to play kind of terminology in the same way that Call of Duty is traditionally best played on the PlayStation consoles, because you do have this year-long exclusivity of certain modes. You do have timed exclusive updates. It's that kind of situation that in the minds of players makes Call of Duty connected to PlayStation, and you'll probably be seeing that with a lot of Bethesda games as well. So for instance, expansions coming to Fallout might be first on Xbox. It might run slightly better on Xbox platforms, not because of bottlenecking, but because of power structures. There's a lot of potential here, but ultimately, it sounds like you aren't going to have to worry too much about specific games being pulled completely into the Xbox ecosystem, at least for existing franchises. I think Bethesda will end up making exclusives for Xbox at some point, in the same way that Obsidian has made Grounded, for instance, but I don't think it's going to be your big Fallout, Doom, Elder Scrolls kind of stuff, or Wolfenstein for that matter. But good to hear an update from that one. However, if you do want to play on the newest Xbox consoles, Xbox Series X and S supply shortages are expected to continue into April 2021, according to Microsoft. Keen gamers around the world have struggled to get their hands on the Xbox Series X and S console since launch, and it looks like things aren't going to get any easier for eager consumers anytime soon. During last week's Jefferies Interactive Entertainment Conference, transcribed by Seeking Alpha, Microsoft's Chief Financial Officer Tim Stewart acknowledged the supply-demand disparity with the new hardware and suggested it's going to last a while longer yet. Quote, I think we'll continue to see supply shortages as we head into post-holiday quarter, so Microsoft's Q3, calendar Q1, and then when we get to Q4, all of our supply chain continuing to go full speed heading into kind of the pre-summer months, said Stewart. If you're unfamiliar with Microsoft's financial year, that means we can expect supply to level out more predictably around April 2021. Good luck getting yourself a console in the bag before then if you're chomping at the bit. Xbox boss Phil Spencer has also acknowledged the shortages and has apologized during a recent appearance over at GlitchCon, thanks to GameSpot. We need more consoles, Spencer admitted. The number one request I got over and over is it's hard to get consoles right now, and I really apologize for that. We've been building them for almost 2 months now and trying to get as many into the stores as we can, but the demand is just so high. At least we know Microsoft is doing everything in its power to make more stock available. In an Xbox Wire post last week, Liz Hamron, CVP of Gaming Experiences and Platforms at Microsoft, assured consumers that the company is working with retailers to make more stock available. In the same interview, Tim Stewart also noted about Bethesda and Microsoft's upcoming relationship, and the Xbox Series X and S consoles both launched on November the 10th. If you did want to try and pick one up, they are out now. This is not really surprising, and Sony is going to be facing the exact same situation, if not worse. And of course, the April 2021 prediction for Microsoft is also just a prediction. Things could change, production pipelines could shift, it could get better, it could get worse. Ultimately, April 2021 seems to be the stake in the ground for when you should be able to generally find a console available. And that is okay. Except for the holiday season. This is going to be a big disappointment for tons and tons of kids around the world that are wanting one of these consoles for their big gift this year. And that's a huge bummer. But ultimately, I'm still impressed with what has been able to be accomplished currently in the current state of the world. We are currently living through a pandemic where we have been able to successfully launch 2 consoles with minimal issues. That is incredibly impressive for Microsoft and Sony and all of the companies and teams behind the scenes that made that possible. The fact that we only have a couple of months of shortages here is pretty impressive. And by shortages, they don't mean that this first round that has gone out this week is going to be the only round that goes out during the holiday season. There's continually new stock. So if you are really trying to get one, you can probably find one this holiday season if you are going to be absolutely balls to the wall trying to find one of these consoles. So if that's something you want to do, the supply will still be there. But for general consumers that just want to walk in and pick up an Xbox, it looks like April 2021 for those, and I would predict probably about the same for PlayStation 5, but that's just my 2 cents. Now moving on, PlayStation 5 DualSense Steam support is in beta, and we're talking about the full shebang coming soon. Haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, that's awesome. Controller support on Steam is a great way for PC players to use their favorite console peripherals while heading into modding paradise. It's great for accessibility, it's great for games that have specific controls like racing titles, and basically any Assassin's Creed adventure, and it's also just a nice option for those looking to play beyond the keyboard and mouse experience. With the PS5 out now for most, Steam has added PS5 DualSense support in the beta phase. The most recent Steam Client beta, which is used to test new features and fixes, includes initial input support, for the PlayStation 5 specific DualSense controller. Before you get too excited, the features that have PlayStation fans raving about the new controller, such as haptics, gyro functionality, and more, are not yet supported. The initial beta phase revolves solely around initial support. More complex functionality of the DualSense will come at a later date. The Xbox Series X controller support has also been tweaked, fixing the issue where X-specific unit was showing up as 2 separate controllers when plugged in. Other fixes in the latest client beta update for Steam include fixes to some game manuals opening inside of the Steam client instead of the user's browser, fixed shelf drop-down rendering from displaying without a background, and fixed blank UI windows appearing at startup on some systems. Some team users have noted that since the update went live, Steam is recognizing the DualSense controller as a standard DualShock controller from the previous generation. While Valve has not commented on that yet, it's likely because it's the base form of the controller itself being utilized, with the more advanced features remaining inactive. Most responding to the most recent update are excited to learn when the more complicated features of the DualSense controller will become available, especially the adaptive triggers. Fantastic news, especially for PC players, because going into this generation, if you were already playing on PC, a lot of people said the only thing you would need is a PlayStation 5, because nearly all of the Xbox games are going to be coming to PC. In fact, all of them are going to be on PC because of Microsoft's approach. Now, when it comes to the PlayStation 5, you are going to have some games that are on PC and some that are not. So, for instance, if you are trying to get the new God of War, that's not been confirmed to be on PC. The new Horizon Zero Dawn, or I should say Horizon Forbidden West, is not confirmed to be on PC. Now, will it come at some point in the future? Potentially. But Sony has been pretty stingent on the fact that not all of their games are going to be coming to PC. But if they do, then you're set. On top of that, these big third-party games that take advantage of DualSense, such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla, such as your Call of Duty Black Ops Cold Wars, to be able to have that adaptive trigger functionality on PC is incredible. It's fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing it for myself for sure. But if you did want to pick up a DualSense controller, of course they are out now in many parts of the world, as they shipped the accessories early ahead of the PlayStation 5 launch. But just a fantastic little feature coming to PC players in the future. But that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed today's show, drop me a like down below and let me know what you think about everything we talked about here today. But specifically, when do you think Halo Infinite is going to come out? I would love to hear your thoughts on that one. But until next time, you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll talk to you soon, and peace.